You don't fear rejection. You fear what you've told yourself rejection means. And what you've told yourself is completely irrational. I'm going to show you the 3 beliefs that are creating this fear, and once you see them clearly, you're going to laugh at how long you've been scaring yourself over nothing. Let's get started. Look, I get it. Rejection feels terrible. You've probably avoided situations your whole life because you didn't want to face that feeling. You've stayed quiet when you wanted to speak up. You didn't ask for what you wanted. You played it safe. And you've told yourself that's just being realistic, being careful, protecting yourself. But here's what's actually happening. You're not protecting yourself from rejection. You're protecting 3 irrational beliefs that are making you miserable. And I know they're irrational because I've spent 50 years studying how people disturb themselves emotionally. In the next 25 minutes, I'm going to show you exactly what these 3 beliefs are. More importantly, I'm going to show you how to challenge them so effectively that they lose their power over you. You'll walk away knowing exactly how you've been scaring yourself and exactly what to do about it. Sound good? Let's go. Now, most people think rejection causes their fear. It doesn't. Their belief about rejection causes the fear. This is probably the most important thing I ever figured out in all my years of doing therapy. And once you understand this, everything changes. Let me introduce you to what I call the ABC model. It's simple, but it's powerful. A stands for activating event. B stands for belief. C stands for consequence, which is your emotional reaction. And here's the key. Most people think a cause is C. They think the activating event, like getting rejected, directly causes the emotional consequence, like feeling devastated. But that's wrong. Dead wrong. What actually happens is this. B causes C. Your belief about the event causes your emotional reaction, not the event itself. The event is just an event. It's neutral. What you believe about it, what you tell yourself about it, that's what creates your emotional response. Let me give you an example. 2 people walk into a job interview. They both get rejected. Same exact situation, right? Same activating event. But one person shrugs it off, feels a little disappointed, and moves on to the next opportunity. The other person spirals into depression, thinks they're worthless, and gives up on job hunting for months. Same event. Completely different emotional consequences. Why? Because they had different beliefs about what that rejection meant. The first person believed something like, well, that's disappointing, but there are other jobs out there. This doesn't mean anything about my worth as a person. The second person believed, this rejection proves I'm a failure. I'll never get hired anywhere. I'm worthless. You see? Same A, different B, completely different C. And here's what's really important for understanding your fear of rejection. Your fear happens before the rejection even occurs. Think about that. You're afraid of asking someone out, or applying for a job, or speaking up at a meeting before you've even been rejected. So what are you actually afraid of? You're afraid of activating your own irrational beliefs. You're afraid of what you'll tell yourself if you get rejected. You're literally scaring yourself with your own thoughts. The rejection isn't the problem. Your anticipated beliefs about the rejection are the problem. And by blaming the rejection for your feelings, you make yourself completely powerless. You're saying, that person out there controls how I feel. But that's horseshit. They don't control how you feel. Your beliefs control how you feel. When you recognize this, when you really get this, you take back your power. You can't control whether someone rejects you. That's up to them. But you absolutely can control what you believe about it. And that's where your power is. So if it's your beliefs creating the fear, what are those beliefs exactly? Let me show you the first one, and I guarantee you've said this to yourself hundreds of times. The first irrational belief is this: I must be accepted. Now, let me be clear. Wanting acceptance is perfectly rational. Preferring acceptance is healthy. We're social creatures. Of course, we want people to like us, to accept us, to approve of us. That's normal. That's fine. But somewhere along the way, you transformed that preference into an absolute demand. You went from I want acceptance to I must have acceptance. From I'd like people to approve of me to I need people to approve of me. From it would be nice if they said yes to they have to say yes. I call this masturbation. You're masturbating all over yourself. You're taking something you want and turning it into something you absolutely must have. And that transformation, that's what creates your anxiety. That's what creates your fear. Let me break down the difference. A preference is flexible. A preference says, I'd really like this to happen, but if it doesn't, I can handle it. A demand is rigid. A demand says, this absolutely must happen, and if it doesn't, it's catastrophic. You feel the difference? Preferences leave room for reality. Demands fight against reality. And here's the thing about demands. They don't work. You could demand that people accept you all you want. You can insist that they must like you. You could tell yourself you absolutely need their approval. And you know what happens? Nothing. Reality doesn't care about your demands. People will accept you or reject you based on their own reasons, their own preferences, their own situations. Your demanding doesn't change that one bit. All your demanding does is make you anxious and afraid. Because when you demand something, you're setting yourself up for disturbance if you don't get it. And since you can't guarantee you'll get acceptance from everyone, you live in constant fear that your demand won't be met. So how do you recognize this belief in yourself? Listen to your language. Pay attention to the words you use when you think about social situations. Do you use words like must, should, have to, need, got to? Those are red flags. Those are signs you're demanding instead of preferring. Notice when you feel anxiety before asking for something. That anxiety is coming from your demand. You're telling yourself, they must say yes. I need this to work out. I have to get their approval. And because you can't guarantee that will happen, you feel afraid. Pay attention to perfectionism in social situations. Do you rehearse conversations over and over? Do you agonize over every word in a text message? Do you avoid speaking up unless you're absolutely certain everyone will approve? That's demanding. You're demanding that you must perform perfectly, that you must get approval, that you must avoid any possibility of rejection. And notice when you catastrophize potential rejection. When you think about asking someone out or applying for a job or sharing your idea, does your mind immediately jump to worst-case scenarios? They'll definitely say no. Everyone will laugh at me. I'll be humiliated. That catastrophizing comes from your demand. You've told yourself you must be accepted, so the possibility of rejection feels catastrophic. So what's the alternative? What's the rational belief? It's this: I strongly prefer acceptance, but I don't absolutely need it. Or, it would be nice if they said yes, but I can handle it if they say no. Or, I want their approval, but I don't require it to survive. Can you feel the difference? There's still desire there. There's still motivation. You still care about the outcome, but there's no desperation. There's no anxiety, because you're not demanding something you can't control. You're preferring it, wanting it, working toward it, but not insisting that reality must conform to your wishes. Now, when you demand acceptance and face the possibility of rejection, your mind does something really destructive. It takes that potential rejection and turns it into a complete catastrophe. That's the second belief. The second irrational belief is this: rejection is awful, terrible, horrible, catastrophic, the end of the world. I call this awfulizing. And let me tell you, people are incredibly good at it. They take something that's disappointing or inconvenient and blow it up into the worst thing that could possibly happen. But let's be clear about what awful actually means. When I say something is awful, I mean it's more than 100% bad. I mean it's worse than it absolutely should be. I mean it couldn't possibly be any worse. And here's the question: is rejection really awful by that definition? No, it's not. Rejection is bad. I'm not going to pretend it feels good. It's disappointing. It's uncomfortable. It can hurt. But it's not awful. It's not catastrophic. It's not the end of the world. It's just bad. Maybe 20% bad. Maybe 30% bad on a really tough day. But not 100% bad. Let me give you a way to think about this. Imagine a scale from 0 to 100. 0 is neutral, nothing happening. 100 is the worst thing you can possibly imagine. The death of someone you love deeply. A terminal diagnosis. A natural disaster that destroys everything you have. Those are up near 100. They're truly terrible. Now, where does rejection fit on that scale? Someone turns down your date invitation. Someone doesn't hire you for a job. Someone disagrees with your idea in a meeting. Where do those actually rank? Honestly, probably around 20, maybe 30. They're disappointing. They sting a bit. but they're nowhere near the worst things that could happen to you. But when you're awfulizing, you treat rejection like it's a 99. You treat it like it's the worst possible thing. You use language like, it would be terrible if they said no, or it would be horrible if they rejected me, or I'd be devastated if they turned me down. And that language, those words, they're not just describing your feelings. They're creating your feelings. When you tell yourself something is awful, your brain believes you. It triggers a fear response like you're facing a genuine threat to your survival. Your heart races. Your palms sweat. You feel panic. And why? Because you've convinced yourself that someone potentially saying no to you is equivalent to a life-threatening situation. Let me tell you a story. Years ago, I decided to overcome my own fear of talking to women. So I went to the Bronx Botanical Garden, and I systematically approached every woman I saw who was alone. Just walked up, started a conversation, and if there was any interest, I'd ask them out. You know how many women I approached? 130. You know how many said yes? One. 1 out of 130. Now, if I'd been awfulizing those rejections, what would have happened? I would have approached the first woman, gotten rejected, told myself it was awful and terrible and horrible, and given up. I never would have met that one woman who said yes. I never would have overcome my fear. I would have stayed stuck. But I didn't awfulize. I treated each rejection for what it was. Disappointing, but not awful. Inconvenient, but not the end of the world. And you know what I discovered? I survived. Every single rejection. I didn't die. I didn't fall apart. I didn't become worthless. I just moved on to the next person. That's the damage awfulizing does. It creates intense fear before rejection even happens. It makes you avoid opportunities. It makes you play small. It keeps you stuck in your comfort zone because you've convinced yourself that stepping outside of it would be catastrophic. And it makes you more upset than the situation warrants. When you do get rejected, and you've been telling yourself it would be awful, you experience way more distress than necessary. You create suffering for yourself on top of the normal disappointment. So what's the realistic alternative? What's the rational belief? It's this. Rejection is unfortunate, but it's not the end of the world. Or it's disappointing, but I can handle disappointment. Or it's bad, but lots of things are bad and I survive them just fine. Notice the difference? You're not pretending rejection feels good. You're not being a Pollyanna about it. You're acknowledging it's unpleasant, but you're also keeping it in perspective. You're seeing it accurately instead of catastrophizing it. Think about other things you've survived in your life. You've been disappointed before. You've been rejected before. You've faced setbacks and obstacles and failures. And you're still here. You made it through. Because those things, as bad as they felt at the time, were not awful. They were just bad. And you have the capacity to handle bad things. Okay, so you're demanding acceptance and awfulizing rejection. But there's a third belief that really seals the deal on your fear. This one convinces you that you literally cannot handle rejection. The third irrational belief is this. I can't stand it. I can't tolerate rejection. I can't bear the discomfort. It's unbearable. I'll fall apart. I'll be destroyed. I call this I can't stand it itis, or low frustration tolerance. And it's one of the most limiting beliefs people carry around. But let's examine this belief for a second. You say you can't stand rejection. What does that actually mean? Does it mean you'll die if someone rejects you? No. Does it mean you'll lose your mind? No. Does it mean you'll cease to exist? Obviously not. So what does I can't stand it actually mean? What you really mean is I won't like it. And that's true. You won't like rejection. It's uncomfortable. It doesn't feel good. But there's a huge difference between I won't like it and I can't stand it. You can stand things you don't like. You do it all the time. You stand traffic even though you don't like it. You stand bad weather even though you don't like it. You stand paying bills and going to the dentist and having awkward conversations even though you don't like any of those things. You have the capacity to tolerate discomfort. You've proven it over and over throughout your entire life. So why would rejection be any different? Why would that particular discomfort be something you can't stand when you stand so many other uncomfortable things? The answer is it wouldn't be different. You can stand rejection just like you can stand any other uncomfortable experience. Let me give you some evidence. Have you ever been rejected before? Of course you have. Everyone has. And did you survive it? Yes, you did. You're here right now, which means you stood it. You didn't like it, but you stood it. You made it through. And that proves, beyond any doubt, that you can stand rejection. But here's what happens when you believe you can't stand it. You avoid any situation where rejection might occur. You stay in your comfort zone. You don't ask for what you want. You don't take risks. You don't pursue opportunities. Why? Because you've convinced yourself that the discomfort of potential rejection is something you cannot tolerate. And that belief, that one belief, can limit your entire life. Think about all the things you haven't done because you were afraid of rejection. The relationships you didn't pursue. The jobs you didn't apply for. The ideas you didn't share. The dreams you didn't chase. And why? Because you told yourself you couldn't stand the possibility of being told no. But you can stand it. You absolutely can. And I'm not just being optimistic here. I'm looking at the evidence. You've handled uncomfortable feelings before. You've dealt with disappointment and embarrassment and frustration and sadness. You've experienced emotional pain and you survived it. Every single time. You know what you're actually saying when you say, I can't stand it? You're saying, I'm too fragile to handle normal human experiences. You're saying, I'm weaker than I actually am. You're underestimating your own strength, your own resilience, your own capacity to cope with difficulty. Let me tell you about a client I worked with once. She hadn't been on a date in 15 years. 15 years. And when I asked her why, she said she couldn't stand rejection. She was convinced that if someone turned her down, she would fall apart completely. So she just avoided dating altogether. I asked her, have you ever been rejected before? She said yes. I asked, did you fall apart? She paused. Well, no, I guess not. I said, so you have direct evidence that you can stand rejection, and yet you're telling yourself you can't. Why do you think that is? She didn't have a good answer. Because there isn't a good answer. She was just repeating a belief she'd told herself so many times that she accepted it as truth without ever examining it. So we worked on changing that belief. Every time she caught herself thinking, I can't stand rejection, she challenged it. She asked herself, where's the evidence I can't stand it? Haven't I stood it before? And then she replaced it with a more accurate belief. I don't like rejection, but I can stand it. I've stood it before and I can stand it again. And then, this is the crucial part, she took action. She started dating. And yes, she got rejected sometimes. And you know what happened? She stood it. Just like I told her she would. Just like she'd done before. The rejection wasn't pleasant, but she tolerated it. She handled it. She proved to herself that she was stronger than she thought. The empowering alternative belief is this. I can stand rejection even though I don't like it. Or, it's uncomfortable, but I've handled uncomfortable before. Or, I can tolerate this feeling without falling apart. Or, I'm stronger than my discomfort. Can you feel the difference in those statements? You're not pretending rejection feels good. You're acknowledging it's uncomfortable. But you're also affirming your ability to handle it. You're recognizing your own strength instead of exaggerating your fragility. Now that you know these 3 beliefs, here's the question. How do you actually change them? Because knowing about them isn't enough. You've got to actively challenge and dispute them. You've got to argue against them like a lawyer destroying a weak case. This is what I call disputation. It's the D in my ABCD model, and it's where the real work happens. You don't just passively notice your irrational beliefs. You actively attack them. You question them. You demand evidence. You refuse to accept nonsense. Let me show you how to dispute each of these 3 beliefs, and I want you to do this forcefully. Don't be wimpy about it. Really challenge these thoughts like you're cross-examining a witness who's lying on the stand. First, how do you dispute? I must be accepted. You ask yourself, where's the evidence I must be accepted? Show me the law of the universe that says people have to approve of me. Where is it written? Who says I need everyone's approval to live a good life? Challenge it. Do successful people get rejected sometimes? Yes, all the time. Do happy people get rejected sometimes? Yes, constantly. So clearly, being rejected doesn't prevent success or happiness. So why do I absolutely need to avoid it? Counter it. I want acceptance. I prefer acceptance. I'll work toward getting acceptance. But I don't absolutely need it. I'm not going to die without it. I won't fall apart without it. It's a preference, not a requirement. Reality check. Plenty of successful people have been rejected many times. Every person who's accomplished anything has heard no more than they've heard yes. So this idea that I must be accepted is clearly false. Reality proves it's false every day. Second, how do you dispute rejection is awful? You ask yourself, is this really the worst thing that could happen to me? On a scale of actual bad things, where does this rank? Is someone saying no to me really as bad as losing someone I love? As bad as a serious illness? As bad as a natural disaster? Challenge it. What makes this awful instead of just disappointing? What makes this catastrophic instead of just inconvenient? I'm using big dramatic words, but does the situation actually warrant those words? Counter it. Rejection is unfortunate. It's disappointing. It's uncomfortable, but it's not awful. It's not terrible. It's not the end of the world. It's just an unpleasant experience, and I've handled plenty of unpleasant experiences before. Reality check. I've been rejected before. Multiple times. And I'm fine. I'm still here. My life didn't end. I didn't fall apart. So clearly, rejection is not as awful as I'm telling myself it is. The evidence of my own life proves that. Third, how do you dispute I can't stand it? You ask yourself, what's the evidence I can't tolerate rejection? Have I been rejected before? Did I survive it? Am I still here? So clearly, I can stand it. I've already proven I can stand it. Challenge it. What does can't stand it even mean? Will I die? Will I lose my mind? Will I cease to exist? No, none of those things will happen. So what am I actually saying? I'm just saying I won't like it. And not liking something is completely different from not being able to stand it. Counter it. I don't like rejection. It's uncomfortable, but I can stand uncomfortable things. I stand them all the time. I'm tougher than I'm giving myself credit for. I have the capacity to tolerate this feeling. Reality check. I'm still alive after every previous rejection. That's proof positive that I can stand rejection. If I couldn't stand it, I'd be gone. But I'm here. So clearly, I can stand it. Now here's the key to making disputation actually work. You got to do it forcefully. You've got to do it with conviction. You can't just think, well, maybe I don't need approval in a weak, uncertain voice. You got to argue it like you mean it, like you're fighting for your life. Because in a way, you're fighting for your life. You're fighting to free yourself from beliefs that are limiting your entire existence. Use emotion in your self-talk. Get passionate about it. Where's the evidence I must be accepted? There is no evidence. That's complete horseshit. I don't need everyone's approval. I want it sure, but I don't need it. Feel the conviction. Feel the truth of it. And repeat these disputes regularly. Your irrational beliefs didn't form overnight, and they won't disappear overnight. You've been reinforcing them for years, maybe decades. So you need to dispute them consistently, repeatedly, until the rational beliefs become stronger than the irrational ones. I used to tell my clients, dispute your irrational beliefs every day. Make a practice. Every time you catch yourself demanding approval or awfulizing rejection or telling yourself you can't stand it, stop and dispute it right then and there. Don't let it slide. Attack it. And here's what happens when you do this consistently. Your irrational beliefs start to lose their power. They become less automatic, less believable, and your rational beliefs become stronger, more natural, more convincing. Until eventually, your default response to rejection isn't fear, it's just mild disappointment. And that's freedom. But here's what makes disputation really stick. You can't just think your way out of fear of rejection. You have to take action while you're disputing these beliefs. You have to face rejection in real life while practicing your new rational beliefs. That's how they become real. That's how they move from your head to your gut. Let me talk to you about unconditional self-acceptance. This is the foundation that makes everything else work. And it's simple, but it's profound. You accept yourself as a fallible human being regardless of your performance, regardless of other people's approval, regardless of your achievements or failures. You're not worthless if someone rejects you, and you're not wonderful if someone accepts you. You're just a complex human being who sometimes succeeds and sometimes fails. Your worth doesn't go up and down based on external events. You're valuable simply because you exist, because you're alive, because you're human. Most people base their self-worth on conditions. I'm worthwhile if I'm successful. I'm valuable if people like me. I'm good if I achieve my goals. But that's conditional self-acceptance. And it's a recipe for constant anxiety and fear, because you can never fully control those conditions. Unconditional self-acceptance says, I accept myself no matter what. Even if I fail, even if people reject me, even if I make mistakes, even if I look foolish. I'm a fallible human being, and that's okay. I don't have to be perfect. I don't have to please everyone. I don't have to succeed at everything I try. Now, this doesn't mean you accept your behaviors unconditionally. You can and should evaluate what you do. That was a mistake. I could have handled that better. I want to improve in that area. That's healthy. That's how you grow. But you separate your behaviors from yourself. You don't say, I did something bad, therefore I am bad. You say, I did something bad, but I'm a complex person who sometimes does bad things and sometimes does good things, and my worth as a human being remains constant regardless. Here's how this relates to fear of rejection. If your self-worth depends on other people's acceptance, then rejection threatens your entire identity. When someone says no to you, you interpret it as, I am worthless. And of course you're going to fear that. Who wouldn't fear having their entire sense of worth destroyed? But if you accept yourself unconditionally, then rejection is just data. It's just information. That person wasn't interested. Okay, that doesn't make me worthless. That just means that particular person, in that particular situation, said no. And you move on. You can acknowledge that you did something poorly without believing that you are poor. I didn't handle that conversation well is very different from I am bad at conversations. One is an observation about a specific behavior. The other is a global rating of your entire being. And global ratings are always inaccurate because you're too complex to be rated. So practice this. Practice separating what you do from who you are. Practice accepting yourself even when you fail, even when you're rejected, even when you make mistakes. Practice saying, I am a worthwhile person simply because I'm alive, and nothing can change that fundamental truth. Now, here's where the rubber meets the road. You got to take action. You've got to deliberately put yourself in situations where rejection is possible, and you've got to practice your new beliefs in real time. You've got to experience rejection while disputing your irrational thoughts and accepting yourself unconditionally. That's how these concepts become real instead of just intellectual. Start with low-stakes rejections. Ask someone for a small favor they might say no to. Make a minor request that might get turned down. Try starting a conversation with someone who might not be interested. The key is to create opportunities to practice handling rejection in situations where the consequences aren't huge. And while you're doing this, notice your beliefs. Before you ask, what are you telling yourself? Are you demanding that they must say yes? Are you awfulizing the possibility of rejection? Are you telling yourself you can't stand it? Catch those beliefs. Then dispute them right there. I don't need them to say yes. I just prefer it. If they say no, it'll be disappointing, but not awful. I can absolutely stand hearing no. Feel those disputes. Believe them. Then take the action. Ask the question. Make the request. Take the risk. And whatever happens, accept yourself. If they say yes, great. If they say no, remind yourself that you're still a worthwhile person. You still have value. You just experienced a moment of rejection, and you're handling it. And then do it again. And again. Gradually work up to bigger risks, bigger asks, more significant situations. Each time, practicing your rational beliefs. Each time, proving to yourself that you can handle rejection. Each time, building your tolerance. I remember working with a client who was terrified of job interviews. He'd avoid applying for jobs because he couldn't handle the thought of being rejected. So he started small. I had him go to stores and ask employees questions they might not know the answer to. Low stakes. If they couldn't help him, that was a tiny rejection, and he practiced handling it. Then we moved up. He started applying for jobs he wasn't even that interested in, just to practice interviewing. And yes, he got rejected sometimes. But each time, he disputed his irrational beliefs. Each time, he accepted himself regardless of the outcome. Each time, he proved to himself that he could stand it. And eventually, he applied for a job he really wanted. And he got rejected. And you know what? He was disappointed, but he was okay. He didn't spiral. He didn't give up. He just moved on to the next opportunity because he'd built up his rejection tolerance through practice. That's what I want for you. I want you to become rejection-proof. Not because rejection won't happen. It will. But because when it does, you'll handle it like a champ. You'll see it for what it is, disappointing but not devastating. Uncomfortable but not unbearable. Just a normal part of life that you're fully capable of handling. All right, let's bring this all together because this is important. You fear rejection because of 3 irrational beliefs. First, you demand acceptance instead of preferring it. You turn "I want" into "I must," and that creates anxiety. Second, you awfulize rejection and treat it like a catastrophe when it's really just disappointing. Third, you tell yourself you can't stand rejection when you absolutely can, and you've proven it every time you've survived it. These beliefs create your fear, not the rejection itself. Your beliefs. And that's actually good news, because you can change your beliefs. You can't control whether someone rejects you, but you can control how you think about it. So here's what you do. You dispute these beliefs forcefully. You ask yourself for evidence. You challenge the logic. You refuse to accept nonsense. You argue against your irrational thoughts like your life depends on it, because your quality of life does depend on it. And then, this is crucial, you take action. You put yourself in situations where you might get rejected, and you practice your new beliefs in real time. You start small and work your way up. You build your rejection tolerance through experience, not just through thinking about it. And through all of this, you practice unconditional self-acceptance. You accept yourself whether people approve of you or not. Your worth doesn't come from their acceptance. You're valuable because you're a living, breathing human being. Period. End of story. Now, I'm not going to lie to you. Rejection still won't feel great. You're not going to love it. You're not going to throw a party when someone says no to you. But you won't fear it anymore. You'll see it for what it is. Disappointing, inconvenient, sometimes frustrating, but absolutely not catastrophic. And you'll know, with certainty, that you can handle it. So here's my challenge to you. Pick one situation this week where you've been avoiding potential rejection. Just one. Maybe it's asking someone out. Maybe it's applying for a job. Maybe it's sharing your idea in a meeting. Maybe it's just starting a conversation with someone new. Dispute your irrational beliefs about it. Challenge your demands. Question your awfulizing. Remind yourself that you can stand it. Then go do it anyway. Take the action. Face the possibility of rejection. And see what happens. I think you'll be surprised at how much stronger you are than you've been telling yourself. And if you want to go deeper on this, I've got another video that'll help you. It's about the one phrase you need to stop saying to yourself if you want to stop disturbing yourself emotionally. It's a phrase that's probably running through your head multiple times a day, and it's creating way more suffering than you realize. The video breaks down exactly what this phrase is, why it's so damaging, and what to say instead. It's like a masterclass in catching yourself before you create your own misery. Click on it right now. Watch it while this information is fresh in your mind. Because knowing these 3 beliefs is great, but catching yourself in the act of using them, that's where real change happens. Go watch it. Do it now.